American Giant makes great clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, and more right here in the U.S. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, code STAPLE20.
Buy 5 quarts of Castrol Edge Full Synthetic Motor Oil and get a $15 gift card after rebate, plus 2 times points at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back here to Kickin It With Knuble, episode 9. We are here with our third guest, Mike. Dan Carcillo, Carbomb. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and happy to sit down with you today.
Hey, buddy. Good to be here. Great shirt.
Thanks. Yeah, for the stash, baby. I had to pull this one out of the closet today. Put it on.
He's got a little bin. He's got a little bin in the back with every promo T-shirt.
yeah. They're all
for every guy that comes on.
They still fit, probably the size when you were like, when you were a kid.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So Dan, how you doing? How's life treating you?
Good. Yeah, man. I have my health, and it's first and foremost. I have purpose, and my kids are healthy. Family's healthy. I've got four little ones. I live in, I think, the best state in the United States, which is Florida. It's hot, sunny right now. And yeah, I'm just, I feel really good about where I am in my life.
Nice. That's awesome. In terms of obviously you and Mike, you guys played together a little bit in Philly. That was 08-09. Dan, you came at the trade deadline. I just want to kind of start there. Was there anything that you knew about Philly when you got traded there from Phoenix? You actually got traded for Scotty Upshall, which is funny in the podcast world now. Upshall's on missing curfew. You guys got traded there. Was there anything that you knew about Philly? Anything that kind of stood out when you got here?
So Philly was an organization that I liked the most as a kid. I grew up in just north of Toronto. So you had, the Lindros, Recchi, Leclerc line, and I think it was the Legion of Doom, and then I just like my playing style and the energy every time you watched a game in Philly. You guys had some serious battles with the Leafs, and so the organization from that standpoint, like I didn't emulate my game after it, but I think my game was a good fit for coming to Philly. And I just remember it was the trade deadline. I asked for a trade from Arizona. We kind of exhausted that relationship. I was going pretty hard on the ice and off the ice. And I remember just hearing the announcement. It was pretty late in the day. And then Twitter was just starting, or social media, and people were, I just remember, mad. That they're like, who the heck is this Carcillo guy? Upshaw was really popular. He's a great player. And I remember Paul Holmgren kind of getting on, doing an interview and saying, just give him a week or two. And then I think everything, worked out. And I was really, at that point in my career, I was really craving to be in a market, in a hockey market that was passionate about hockey, and Philly couldn't have been a better fit.
Well, you bring up the market piece of it, right? Like guys who play in Phoenix, they like playing there. It's a great place to play, and you get the weather, and you get your golf, and you hustle out of practice. You're on a golf course. There's it's a growing city. It's a great place to play, but seemed like you coming to Philly, you're like tailor-made for that place, right? It seemed like it's right up your alley. And it's funny you say that about Homer, just saying, just throttle down. Great comparable to me is PJ Stock, right? PJ Stock was a little bit older than you. I played with him in Boston, or in New York, and then he got traded, I think, from Philly to Boston, and came in and was your style player. And I said to the guys in the room, I remember saying, I go, just give this kid a little bit. You're going to see some shit. You're going to see some stuff. And so obviously you had a nice reputation going as far as your style of play. And it seemed like Philly would have been a completely, the city would embrace your effort on the ice every night.
That's a good. Thank you for the comparable. I mean, PJ's he was amazing when he went to Boston. I just wanted to be. I wanted to be noticed, or I guess I wanted. I just thought that my style of play could benefit a team like an Original Six, pushing for a playoffs, and I just wanted. I really fed off of, in my playing career, Noobs, maybe you were the same, but the crowd, the energy. And Phoenix at that time was like where guys went to die, no offense or anything, but it was kind of like,
I totally get it. Yeah.
JR was there, Jovo was there, Wayne was getting paid more than any player to date in the league. It was like kind of, we'll be out of the playoffs by December, and it's okay. And I was kind of craving for I want to be in the mix, and Philly was, you had Richie, you had Carter, all these guys that were kind of Hartnell, around my age, that we all played against and battled against, with a great mix of veterans like yourself, Noobs, and Timo Kiemenin, and then you had young guys coming up like Giroux, and it was just like, oh, this organization's close. And then, you get steeped in these rivalries with the Penguins, who I was drafted to, and it was just the perfect mix. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you talk about, feeling like that. Phoenix, it's all right whether we win or lose. We're going to be, we're fine. It's fine, and I totally get that. I felt the Florida Panthers were kind of like that too. And until they won everything now, but it was where good players would go to just kind of you were back page news, right? And you come to Philly, and it's the lead story, it's on the front page, and it's this and that, and it matters. And you go to get a coffee, and somebody knows you. Phoenix, nobody knows who you are. They don't even. They're a hockey team here. I'm sure you get that. You get that every once in a while.
In Glendale, and it makes you, and as a player, it makes you. It holds you to be a different standard, to be more accountable for how you bring it every single night. You were on the power play. I wasn't, but 30 or 20 bad seconds on the first unit, and you were getting booed. Didn't matter what place we were in or what game it was of the season, And so, that level of accountability and passion really, really drives you to be attentive to how you're taking care of yourself off the ice, and then how you show up every day to practice and games.
It's a good way to put it, and it's like your coaches and your teammates obviously hold you super accountable, right? Because you're playing for the guys you're sitting next to, and the coaches hold you accountable in a different way. You have your own accountability to your teammates who you're sitting next to, but certainly when you get the pressure of a town, pressure of a city, there's no denying that either. There's another pressure, that athletes don't quite understand, is this of the bowl of the arena, and then, when I leave this arena, for better or worse, some days it's not quite over with. I'm going to hear about it at Starbucks. I'm going to hear about it at my pizza place. So if I stop here for pizza or whatever, I'm going to hear about where I shop. If somebody recognizes me, you're going to hear about it.
Absolutely.
Mail. You got to work on the power play, guys. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I know that. Get my mail.
I remember just walking across the street in next to Rittenhouse Square, and somebody yelled at me to take. I'm from Toronto, so I had a Blue Jays hat on. They're like, Carcillo, take that effing hat off. It's like, man. But that level of scrutiny, if you can handle it, some guys, it breaks guys. For me, even as a young kid, when the rink was kind of empty, I was like, I'll play good, because I've always, tried to do it 100%. But when it was packed, was a time that I stepped it up. I don't know. And we had a bunch of guys in that room that it seemed like it was like that, right? That thrived off of coming and being under that microscope, and I think, to Holmgren's credit. Like, you have to build a team, and you got to be aware of the guys that are gonna, be able to handle that. And when it mattered the most, like I said, when I got there, this team seemed really primed to go on a couple runs, which we did.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you kind of just answered my next question, was like, did it kind of feel like, did you guys obviously you came in 09, you guys lost in the first round of the Penguins. Mike, we talked with Richie, that was the 2 years in a row, against Pitt, 08 and 09, lost in the conference final, or in the playoffs. 1 year was conference finals, next year was first round. 2010 was kind of crazy. Mike, I know you went to Washington then, signed with the Cavs. Dan, you were still at the Flyers. That was kind of a weird year. You guys started really hot. Then almost, it comes down to the last game. You have the Winter Classic in between, where you're fighting Sean Thornton, and you're doing the thumbs up and everything. And it was just like a crazy year. You guys get in, and then you go to the final. Is there anything that stands out from that year that just like it just that I'm assuming that basically that's basically my question. Like, what essentially stands out from that 2010 year?
Well, the year before that you brought up, because this comes up every single year, and Penguins fans won't let me live it down, is the Talbot fight. They were up.
I was waiting. I was sitting on that. I was going to talk about it. Go for it. I want to hear your two, because I've used that story before. But go. I want to hear.
Oh man, it's I remember just looking back to the bench, and I asked permission, like and Richie and a couple of guys were like, get it. And I probably in hindsight shouldn't have fought there. Was that a catalyst to them coming back? And then, I think Crosby swatted one out of midair, and it gave them energy, no doubt about it, right? Like, everybody knew that I was going to beat the wheels off of Talbot, which I did. But like that, you really have to be careful and pick your spots as a hockey player. And that was a big learning lesson for me. Like, I felt a lot of shame and guilt, and I felt that loss was on me because I gave them a spark when I shouldn't have, regardless of how the fight went, because you know how it is, noobs in the room. When you show up, you just have to show up to a fight, and you can spark a team by fighting a bigger guy where, and I've done this before, where like I fought McLaren in San Jose. I know I'm going to get the wheels beat off me, but he just smoked somebody, and I have to do it because you got to show up for your teammate. So that was a big lesson. And so I took that, into the next year. We started hot, then we fell off. Media was all over us. And then, we got in on, I think Giroux was 5-hole against Lundqvist, and then Olli Jokinen against Boucher, and he tried to go backhand 5-hole, and Boucher stopped it. That year we had a carousel of goaltenders, and we just did our best. We rode it all the way to the finals. I was a very small part of that run, and I remember
big goal against the Devils too.
Yeah, a little backdoor tap in and from Richie with the wraparound. So that was really cool. And then a big French sandwich with Lapierre and Gagne and Giroux. And then I remember personally being in and out of the lineup and just learning how to contribute to the room, even if you weren't in the lineup. So like one of my big things was keeping it light and playing the music that everybody liked. And regardless if you were in or not, just making sure that you brought that same type of energy. And the run was phenomenal, right? The city was just ripping. I remember the Phillies were in it too. So like both sides, we'd win a series, we'd go over and we'd watch a ball game. And then just against the Hawks, like it really could have gone any way, right? Like, we scored, I remember the first couple of games it was like 6-5.
It was 6-5. Yeah.
That's typical now, but it wasn't typical back in the day. It was a hard fought battle, and we knew a lot of those guys too, right? We were half of our room was kind of that age, and then the other half was a nice mix of vets and prongs and teaming in, and so I just remember the team was really tight knit, regardless of kind of like how it played out in the media. I remember I remember Dry Island and that whole thing coming out the next year. But everybody was just hungry to win, and then you get a little taste of it, and we didn't come close again with that team, but for me personally, I think it sparked. I had a couple surgeries and I had to recover from that, but then that series probably was the reason that I ended up with Chicago. So
yeah.
It's funny, our crossover time there, going back to that 08, 09, you're talking about the Talbot fight, and it was, I remember it, and it had the exact opposite effect of what you felt like it should have. To me, it was like, it was great. Let's pile it on here. Like, let's add this to, like, there's a cherry on top, and we're going to do this, right?
Yeah.
And Max ended up playing for the Flyers later. I got to know him the 1 year I came back, and it was an interesting calculation by him, and I could see, do you take it, or do you take the fight, or you just let it ride, and save it for another time or something? But I don't know. I say that to people. I go, this is one that just did not turn out like it was supposed to, and I understand what you're saying. I mean,
if the bench would have said no, I wouldn't have. I really wouldn't have done it. Yeah, like I remember asking, and me and Max were drafted to the Penguins, so like we knew each other well.
Same camp, right?
Yeah, and I knew Max didn't fight. Like Max, everybody knows he didn't fight, but he was and he's a great dude, man. Like awesome guy. But yeah, kudos to him, man, for sure.
Yeah, I would not have predicted it would have gone that way, but somehow it did. And you got to get. I mean, they made some plays and they executed. Like I don't know. It was interesting.
Yeah, you can't I think you can't pinpoint that for the reason that we lost. Yeah, but you can definitely. As you know, noobs, momentum is so paramount, especially in the playoffs. I learned this the most. I didn't know this at the time. I learned this from Quenneville, where he would harp so much on momentum. If we have it, we do everything to keep it. If we lose it, we do anything in our power to get it back. And there's momentum in a series. Then there's momentum in the game. There's momentum shift by shift. There's then you start breaking it down and deducing it. And that was just a time that I gave them a little spark, and a little energy. And it was
because in your defense at that point of the game, they still have to score 3 goals to tie it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the game is tied then off of that. So like in your defense, like obviously, you're trying to make a play. And then also I think all of it just kind of stems from, how much momentum do you get from a fight versus a goal?
Yeah, maybe should have waited till we were up 4 instead of 3.
Yeah, right. That was my point. I mean, they still had to make plays. I mean, they still did exactly get back in the game, and we let them. Whether we had to play poorly enough to let them back in or give them the chance.
No doubt. It's just like you open the door, right? You open the door for them to get a spark. Then all of a sudden they get one, and you're like, oh man! And then this doubt starts. It just does. It creeps into your mind in the game. And if you can't push it out, but yeah, I remember Sid, I was in the box and he whacked one out of midair. I'm like, oh man, this is not going to end well for me.
I like how this is going. Yeah.
So, but it's all good. I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, things happen and you learn and you live. And I think they went on. Did they win that year? Or was it?
They did. Before? They beat Detroit in 7.
And Talbot had a huge game. I remember.
Talbot had the. I think he scored twice. I know he had the game winner.
And like, man, I couldn't. I was like, I wasn't. Mother effing the guy. Like, I was happy for him because again, we came up in the same organization, and it is what it is. So yeah.
Story something.
For sure. It's a story now. Yeah, no doubt. Every year it's like Twitter. Today was the day when. Every time on his birthday too, it's like, oh, here we go. But it's all good.
Yeah,
all good.
Just in terms of for you guys playing together, any stories from the that short time? I know it was only I think it was like 20 something games and then the playoffs, but any stories you guys could remember?
Well, that would have been our main. Like, it wasn't a huge crossover, right? But Danny coming in, we were like, we're excited to have him. You knew he's going to be a spark, and we knew there was kind of a window starting to open there in Philly. And you jumped through the next year. I left and you got Pronger. I mean, that's nice. That's a big change, big upgrade. But like there was a window there, and it felt like Danny was going to help with that. As far as an exact story, that would be my main one, is just remembering that fight with Talbot and how, in my opinion, it backfired, and through nobody's fault. It just kind of, the gods said, not today. It's not going. It's going your way today, and so.
Yeah, that, and I just remember you being so likable, and everybody looked up to you, but you kept the room like really light, and I just remember everybody really enjoyed being around you, and you were a great leader. You weren't harsh, but guys just really respected you, and I did too in the short amount of time that we were together. So yeah, it was really, really enjoyable playing with you, for sure.
Yeah. Nice of you to say. So.
Of course, buddy.
Yeah,
it's the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah, no, and then in terms of just like that kind of that era, like obviously, like as a Flyers fan, it's been tough the past couple of years. Like you have the rebuild now. You have some of your guys' teammates are involved in this, and Mike, you played with both you guys played with Danny. Obviously, he was GM. Mike, you played with Wayne Simmons, who's now in the org as well. And just in terms of kind of where the team is at, Dan, just like any thoughts on kind of where the Flyers are with the rebuild and Danny and Jonesy and all that?
No, I mean, I think Mike, you would know more than me. But I don't follow hockey too much anymore. So, other than like my boy being here in Florida, and we got to enjoy that run and going to a few games, like sitting on the other side of the glass, shifting that perspective of like, whoa, this is like MMA on skates. No wonder Flyers fans and everybody loves fighting and just this roughness and aggressiveness. So, but no, I just know. The only thing that I can say is like rebuilds are always tough, especially for a city that fans can be a little impatient. And I think that they're in good hands with who's in the front office, especially with Danny B. Tenacious, and I've never played with like a guy that was so skilled, but also so dangerous, and kind of wanted to hurt you in a number of different ways. So I think he's perfect for the organization, and hopefully they can figure it out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, 100%, and especially too, just from when you shifted from from Philly and all that too, just kind of unfortunately just how the team's kind of gone on in the past couple of years. You mentioned 2010 and all, and I think the biggest thing that from that, and just kind of where the Flyers are at now with the rebuild and everything. Obviously, Ed Snyder isn't, he's obviously not around anymore, but is it possible for you guys to kind of put into words like how important he was to the team? Because I think that's one of the biggest things is like, obviously you mentioned Danny and just trying to kind of build it back up. Then you have Jonesy. I think those are two guys that obviously understood, and we're here with Mr. Snyder. But I think they're trying to kind of bring that back. You know what I mean? They're trying to bring that like Flyers culture back. Is it like possible for you guys to kind of put into words like, how important Mr. Snyder was?
Mike, you want to go?
Yeah, he's, it was like pro sports, it used to be family owned, right? And it's blown up through the roof. I mean, I just read last week the average salary in the NHL is, the average worth of a franchise is like $1.5 billion. I mean, and that's like an average, maybe 1/4. So that's like crazy, right? And you think back, George Steinbrenner bought the Yankees for like $5 million, and Ed probably, created a franchise for even less than that, basically gave it to him as long as he could stick with it. His presence as an owner, the mom, call him mom and pop, right? I came up through Detroit, you had the Ilitch family. And there was an answer, right? And there was immediate, the family was the boss, and that's how, stuff got done quick. Questions got answered fast. And if the room needed something, it was done tomorrow. It didn't have to go through this process of accounting, and there weren't layers, and there was more of a family, personal feel to it. And Ed really certainly promoted that. He'd be down in the locker room, win or lose, on Saturday nights, a lot of games to be down in there, coming in, shaking hands of the players. And, you see how how he took care of the guys from the 70s there. And a lot of them chose to stay in the area. That means he treated them really well. And he treated his current players really well and treated the wives great. And it was just this top to bottom, you're going to be treated great here, and, was it probably the best business model for him? No, he could have probably cut corners in a lot of places. It would have been better on his financial bottom line. But, those guys back in the day, they didn't really care. They were like, this is my team, my family. This is how I'm going to treat it. I'm the patriarch around here, and this is how I'm doing it. And nobody would really say anything because it was a very short, tight group at the top that made the decisions. And he was the toppest of the top. He was making the final decision. So I missed that little personal, where they would come down and, things are getting more corporate and stuff and the money's getting huge. But when it was smaller, and he was a terrific owner and he was very present all the time, Dan.
Yeah. I agree with that. When you got there, especially coming from Phoenix and just watching the organization, then you're kind of behind closed doors. The veterans or individuals like Schultz and guys that really, put the team on the map were always around. They always seemed to be in the family room. They were always at the events. They were really taking care of it. It was really it felt very much like a family. And, similar to how fans can help you be accountable and increase your kind of effort on the ice, even just slightly, knowing that you're supported by an owner is really important, because if you know that, you're just going to battle that much harder and you're going to go through the wall because you know that they're not going to, just, throw you aside if something does happen. So I just remember the family room being really tight. I remember when my brothers came and my parents came, that everybody got along, and it was just really this joyful place to be. Everybody wanted to come and families wanted to be there, and Ed wanted them there. I remember it was the year when I was there, it's when they were taking down the Spectrum. So that was a little bit of a transition, and it was just done really respectfully. I remember Pearl Jam kind of closing it out on Halloween. That was a big night. I just remember as a player, when you feel supported, then, again, you go a little harder, and as Noob said, anything that we wanted, we would have pretty quickly. And yeah, it felt very much like a just a tight knit family, which is cool.
Yeah.
Probably before the salary cap came in, I'm sure he was even more generous, but then everything came out of the salary cap violation after he couldn't do it. But, he's the type of owner. If the player said, we want a hot tub in the middle of the locker room, it would have been there tomorrow. It would be there tomorrow. No question. That's what players want. Okay, we need a hot tub over here. All right, well, it's there.
Absolutely.
I can't get it today. It'll be there tomorrow. Type answer. Yeah. So
that's
the way it was. Yeah.
It was so much fun. It was such a fun time to be. The city was just buzzing because everybody was doing well, and it was just the sports complex. I just remember when I first saw it, I'm like, man, I've never seen anything like this. I didn't know that. I
was just about to ask you that.
Football and baseball and hockey, and it's just so much energy encapsulated in this small space. So it was cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think they've talked about expanding it, where they're going to put hotels and maybe another rink and all these other things down there, and just kind of make it this huge complex and kind of just add more down there, which is crazy.
Yeah. And that was the first time that I ever realized that people tailgate for hockey.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you got to be good enough to get into the warm weather. But I remember my brothers. It was the first time they were there tailgating, and they were just having a few beers with a couple people that I introduced them to, a couple buddies. And there was a guy with a Penguins jersey on and a guy with a Philly jersey on. They were just walking together, minding their own business. and somebody just cold cocked the guy with the Penguins jersey just for no reason. And my brother's like, "Oh my gosh, like what the?" I know. Yeah, you got to be a little careful. I remember that there were always fights in the 300s too, and I'll tell this other story that my brothers were. It was in 2010, and my brothers, for whatever reason, they got into a fight in the stands, and my younger brother kind of started it, and then Paul jumped in, and they were getting taken down to the drunk tank, like handcuffed, and and the guards take their IDs, and they didn't say anything, and they saw whose name. They were like, are you Dan's brothers? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, all right, take your cuffs off. And they stuck them back in the family room, but they were scared shitless. So, I think that goes to the culture of the city, and like just how intensely they want to win, and some of these rivalries were pretty crazy,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it just goes to show kind of how crazy Philly is, but also at the same time, like just how passionate they are. And like, I just like watching the Phillies, just like watching the Phillies these past couple of years, like you see all the videos of how packed the stadium is and all. And, it really makes me like, I've personally never seen, I mean, the only time I seen the Flyers in the playoffs was those couple of years they were in, but they were a first round exit, and then the bubble was really like the only like legit run. So I haven't really had any taste of it, you know what I mean? So I'm like kind of dying for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Noobs, you remember like, Florida was kind of dressed like a seat night, but so was Chicago at one point, and then all of a sudden that changed, and
they got Kane and Tate. They started adding kind of their old man passed away, actually. That's which helped. Younger, And the younger son took over and finally put them. They weren't even on TV.
I know they got some TV rights and
such a huge rink too. It was a huge rink. It was just cavernous and nobody was in there. And they put your family. The weirdest part was your family seats were literally right behind the bench. So it's like you come in and we're from right around the lake, right? So like not too far. We're from part of Michigan. It's just around the lake. And so a lot of people is Detroit and Chicago if they wanted to catch up with me or see us. And I'm like, Chicago, it's the easiest ticket to get in the league. You sit right there. It's great. You can even buy one of the nosebleeds. I'm sure they'll just let you sit down there.
Oh my gosh.
Like, get in the arena somehow. You come. It's funny. You see your buddies. You come off from a shift and you're pissed off, and you look. Your eyes go through the glass, and you see your buddy like slamming beers, and you're like, yeah.
I know.
Like you hear pin dropping there for years. Yeah.
I know, that was nuts. That's crazy. Yeah, but I mean that organization was kind of the reason I bring it up is it's like it went from like Wirtz, and then when I got there, it was like you could ask for anything, but then it became like very, very corporate. It was very much a different feel than the Flyers. The Flyers still feels like not too corporate, less suits, and more just passion and working class people and people that I resonate with for sure.
Yeah. Dan, this is my last one here. Obviously, you've done a lot of research and work in terms of CTE and brain injuries and things like that. The NHL, the Player Association, Marty Walsh, the executive director, he just announced the formation of the union's first ever CTE advisory committee for the Players, Players Association, things like that in the NHL. Just any thoughts on that in general?
Yeah, I actually, so my son down here in Florida plays with Hainsey's boy, and Hainsey's the executive director, and I saw it the other day, and we were at a soccer game. I was talking to him about it. But yeah, I think it's a great initiative. I think that everything starts with education and advocacy work to just understand responsibly the risks that you're partaking in, and then I think the second step, which is something that I'm very passionate about, would be, education on, how to prevent these types of injuries. Is the answer taking out fighting and changing rules like that to the game? I personally don't think so. There was a time that when I retired, I thought like that, and I said these types of things, but I've since come to realize that I think that education and being aware of the risk that you are partaking in responsibly, then if you sign on that dotted line, it's your responsibility, and you understand that there is a risk to playing a professional sport that has no out of bounds, where guys are moving 35 miles an hour, and you possibly could get hit in the mouth if you do something silly, and that's just always been a part of the game. So I am big on education. I am big on awareness. I love that they are educating guys about neurodegenerative disease and signs and symptoms so that they can recognize it quickly. And then I think the only other thing that I'm passionate about is, okay, if you have been hurt, how do you get better? How can you reverse these signs and symptoms? Because that's a part of my story. It's a part of a lot of other guys' stories as well that have been in the league. And there are these alternative treatments out there that can help you reverse signs and symptoms of concussion and neurodegenerative disease. So awareness, prevention, and treatment if it does happen to somebody. But I think it's a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's certainly, guys give a lot to make it to the league. Guys have fought their way to the league. They've done stuff to get here. And then, it takes a toll on our players. And we've seen a couple, take their own lives over the course of years. And it's nice to see that maybe some, people call it alternative medicine, alternative treatments are starting to gain traction. ESPN did a great documentary in the last year and a half, following a group down, I think it was Jamaica or wherever it was, somewhere down the Caribbean, and their journey and trying to find some peace and some healing and through some what aren't mainstream medicine type situations, little alternative stuff, and it's more and more acceptance. As some of this stuff is as more people get on board, more research is done, and trying to help guys heal up and get to places where they could be have a normal life again and not be get good sleep and have great habits and then all that stuff. And it's really interesting because you promote the overall well-being. It's not a one trick where you just take some alternative stuff, maybe get into the mushrooms a little bit and change the chemistry in your brain. It's an everyday, every minute, eating well, sleeping well, being healthy in conjunction with all this stuff, eating the right foods, all that stuff, and making yourself to help the whole process. It's this whole intrinsic thing. So it's great to read about.
Yeah. I, there's no magic pill that exists on this earth. And, my life, I will say, was saved by an invitation by Riley Cote.
Riley's big guy on that.
Yep. To go to a farm and he said that this had worked for him. And I was actually at that point very suicidal and stuck in this kind of victimhood mindset of blaming everything that was wrong with me in the NHL as opposed to just really trying to get out of it. And, I partook in a mushroom assisted therapy session and it was decriminalized at the time in one state. Now there's 32 cities and states that have it decriminalized. And it really brought me back and saved my life. It was a catalyst, Mike, you mentioned it, to giving me an opportunity for some of the symptoms to fall away so I didn't have to deal with 15 of them on a daily basis. And then for me to make a conscious decision to start eating well, start getting up at the right times, and start really shifting my perspective on my injury and what had happened to me, getting better, and then creating programming and creating these centers that people can now come to, which is, something we've done in Oregon. I will say at a very high level and federally, these things are illegal. But some of these states, there's now 25 of them, are passing legislation so that people can access this before the FDA makes it a medicine, which is really exciting. And, we're going to be tracking. And this is one of the things that I also, and thank you guys for, giving me an opportunity to speak about this, but I really think that the NHLPA should do something in the way of like an observational research study with us in Oregon, some sort of maybe independent IRB, because they did do something with CBD. Cannabis is a Schedule I. And this is showing really good efficacy for a number of different indications. So hopefully in the future, we can do something like that and prove it out.
Right. It still seems a touch taboo a little bit, but you say there's more and more people like, marijuana was taboo forever. It really was. Gambling and, sports gambling was taboo. And all these things are slowly coming around, and it's not, it might not be tomorrow, might not be a month from now, but they gain traction. It's a little bit of percentage here, a little more acceptance, a little bit. I know my thoughts on marijuana when I thought, guys are trying to get it legalized or state. I'm like, just a bunch of potheads just trying to look for an angle to get in to smoke more weed, right? Then you hear guys talk about it, and they're like, well, it helps me like calm down. And I'm like, I understand. I understand that it's much more. You can change your focus on it, and to your point, stuff that may be an illegal substance in certain states, if done correctly, it's not a free for all by any means. It's got to be really, really managed, and they're microdoses, and it's nothing to mess around with, but. It gains a little more and more momentum, and it's not only for athletes, for people in all walks of life. It can be
for sure.
It's not just athletes; it's people who are going through other stuff, like chronic depression, chronic this, chronic that. Like, make a big deal, big difference.
It's important what you said. I just want to highlight, like, done responsibly, right?
Of course, yes.
We are not talking about giving people recreational doses of mushrooms. These are regulated frameworks where people have licenses in order to grow, in order to test, in order to hand people, and then also train people to be able to lead somebody through an experience in an altered state of consciousness, right? So that they can get a different perspective on their depression. They can wake up, in my case, different brain regions that were shut down due to this physical trauma, and then they can improve their life. Again, it's that little window and opportunity. And then, I had to run 4 miles before this podcast. Like, I had to eat well. I had to stay away from, the ice cream before bed last night. Like, there's these things you still have to do. But if done responsibly, these mushrooms and these therapies are showing really good efficacy in helping people improve their lives, which is exciting.
Yeah, no, it's nice to hear it's helped you out a lot. It's great.
Thanks, buddy.
No, it's a great answer. Really good stuff. Dan, thanks so much. We really do appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So thanks everybody again for all the support as always. Checking out Kickin It With Knuble. We've been getting a lot of support recently from the episodes and everything, so we really do appreciate that. And we'll talk to you guys all again next week.
Great. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Buddy. Thanks for having me, Noobs.